Get cool stuff for what you were going to do anyway. Drink beer. With Buy Beer, Get Gear from Labatt, you can just snap a photo of your receipt and upload it to the website to rack up points for exclusive merch. Get points for every purchase, whether you're grabbing a pint on draft, a case for a party, or a tall boy at the stadium. Any size, any product, anywhere you buy Labatt. Buy beer, get gear. Sign up now at rewards.labattusa.com.
And with that, we welcome you into the Burdick Toyota postgame show. Syracuse men's basketball drops another one. 72-59, the final score from the JPJ in Charlottesville, Virginia. Kyle Marchak with Sam Croston, our first show together, and unfortunately we do it on a somber note as the Cuse are now losers of 2 in a row. No pun intended, losers of 6 of their last 7, and they now fall to 13-11. Sam, just your opening thoughts on another tough loss on the road.
I mean, listen, unfortunately, I think this is a case of we're starting to just see a lot of the same things. You're seeing patterns here, right? The offense feels a little stagnant. It feels like it would be beneficial for them to have a few more set plays. But beyond that, I will say the hard part where I'm struggling is that the defense just isn't playing really great either for the full game. That wasn't always the case. We knew that Syracuse men's basketball was not a good shooting team. That's ultimately been true for most of the year, right? At any given time, it feels like they have max 2 to 3 shooters out there. But the defense was good in the beginning of the year. The defense played well against teams like Tennessee, played well against teams like Houston. Not in this particular case. And again, against teams that are in the top 20, I mean, if defense is your calling card, those are the games where you are going to have to play great defense.
And it again brings us to a similar conversation that I'm sure the callers will bring to us. We'll join the Massage Envy hotline soon, where it calls into question Autry's ability to coach this team because things that you would expect to improve throughout the season are somehow getting worse. Before every game, I always just take track of the normal metrics for each team, average opponent points per game, where it ranks in the ACC. And at the beginning of the year, I'm taking notes and I'm like, all right, 3rd best defense in the ACC, 4th best defense in the ACC. This is a good starting point defensively for Syracuse. It's slowly ticked down to middle of the pack. So the defense is clearly decreasing in quality. I don't know if you noticed this today. I feel like he was switching between man and zone a lot in the first half.
I think they're trying to throw a couple things at the wall and see what sticks here, right? Change doesn't happen unless change happens. I certainly understand that, so I understand why they're trying to switch things up. Listen, is a part of it, Autry? Certainly. I also think a part of it, to be completely honest with you, is that they're just losing momentum. And I want to shout out Mike McAllister, my boy, because him and I were having a conversation earlier today, and we were talking about a couple of things that I knew I wanted to bring up on this show. He had mentioned that he felt like from the time that Syracuse lost that game to Boston College, things were different from that point on. And I completely agree. Of course, once they lose a game like Boston College, which was frankly inexcusable, the fans are going to think season over. By season over, I mean we're not going to be in the NCAA tournament for a 5th straight year. But just because fans are saying that and outside noise is saying that doesn't mean that the team can feel that way, right? You have to be able to look past that. You have to be able to win a game against Miami or whoever it was, because we all knew that the schedule was getting tougher come February. We all knew that it was going to be a gauntlet towards the end. And I think at this point, of course, now they're in a hole. And the window to be able to reach the NCAA tournament becomes smaller and smaller with each of these losses.
Yeah, I know someone that's going to reflect your thoughts on the state of this program, and it's Pat from Syracuse. So let's get to our Massage Envy hotline. Pat, how we doing?
You don't know Tusi, and I don't think Samantha knows Tusi either. But
I know Tusi, Pat.
I'm not sure if you do, but Tusi is somebody who frequents the chat, doesn't post a lot. Been on a text message with him for years, but it's time to call out Tusi because he said one of the stupidest things I heard all year.
Oh, boy.
Said Autry's not the one missing shots. Okay, let me address this right here and now, okay? Nothing is dumber than a two-set mind that thinks that that's the issue, okay? Even the announcer who was questioning his own coaching ability under Joe is literally hitting the point that Autry can't get through his thick skull, okay? The line is you got to keep your team engaged in rhythm and have consequences when you take stupid shots. Donnie Freeman took 5 stupid shots. You promote what you permit. So because our coach is permitting him to do iso ball and stupid shots, there's games that he looks like an NBA first rounder when he's got it cooking, and then there's games that he looks the way he did today. He looked full today, and you know what? It's the same old, same old. I'm only fired up because the blame has to start and end with Autry. It's his team. It absolutely is. And look no further than the graphic at the beginning of the game that showed 3 programs that switched coaches and what happened. So any defense of Autry, I'm not on board with. And if you guys want to join Tucci's party, I'd love to stay on and hear it.
Yeah, well, that's definitely an interesting take, Pat. I appreciate you for joining. Your initial thoughts? I don't think he's talking about Tucci the rapper. I think he's talking about someone else that I'm missing on. So
yes, I believe he's talking about somebody who is consistently in the chat. I mean, listen, I understand what Pat is saying, and I happen to agree that the blame does have to start with Autry.
Yeah.
Because that's just the way that college sports work. This is something that I've thought about a lot throughout the past few weeks. There are some fields in this world. There are some jobs where it's okay to be mediocre. But I think that when it comes specifically to college sports, especially in today's day and age, especially with NIL, where money matters, mediocrity is the enemy. Mm-hmm. And I feel that we're kind of, in some sense, seeing that here.
Yeah.
Syracuse men's basketball is a very, very storied program. Fans should not settle for less than what they know they deserve, which is the NCAA tournament. I have Eric Devendorf come on my podcast at CNY Central once a week called The Orange Zone. And he said that he feels like one of the biggest differences between a Syracuse men's basketball team 20 years ago versus a team now is that the fans always thought 20 years ago, and fans and callers, let me know if you agree with this, that 20 years ago, fans always thought, come February and come March, we have a chance.
Yeah.
And that now, with this team this year and with the team last year, fans think we have no chance. That's a really big difference in mindset. And unfortunately, I think some of that has bled over into the players and the performances that you're seeing. Let's not act like the players don't know some of the conversations that have been happening, don't see what the media is discussing. I want to at least acknowledge that is tough to play through. It's tough to play through that. It's tough to know that these kinds of things are happening. But as an athlete, I think in some way that's what you sign up for. And I know that for me personally, as a former athlete, I'd want to go out there and give my hardest no matter what, 100%. I understand that fans want to see that same effort and energy throughout the entire game too.
And you know what? Devo has been clear about his opinion on things in terms of effort. He mentioned yesterday on the show, or 2 days ago on Orange Nation, that he used to, quote, fist fight 2 to 3 times in practice. Now, whether or not that's real, honestly, I believe it. You know Devo. I've met him in person. I think he's about that. But the point being, there's definitely a lot of coverage around this team, including people like Devo, who are obviously important to the culture of this program, that are calling for just a more visible effort. So with that being said, I know a guy that's going to talk about that. Dro from Clay joining, my good friend. Dro, how are we doing?
I'm doing well, guys. Thank you. So to answer your question about we always have a chance in February. When I grew up, the season started in November. Syracuse was making the tournament. We all knew that. Mm-hmm. And then it was expected in February, okay, do we have a chance at the national championship? Do we have a chance at a Final Four? It was never in doubt. Syracuse is always going to make the NCAA tournament. Unfortunately, sports teams go through some rough times. We're going through some rough times right now. I'll make a quick comparison. If you follow the World Cup in soccer, Italy. Okay, a powerhouse in soccer has not been to the World Cup since 2014. This stuff does happen. St. John's has been down for a long time. They're now back at it again. Georgetown has been down forever. I mean, they haven't been to a Sweet 16 since 2007. Hopefully, when we get the right coach, we get some of that mojo back that we've been used to. But, I mean, it's lack of effort out there today. I mean, not getting rebounds. You're down 4 points. You can't get the ball in bounds. They come back and hit a 3. It's frustrating stuff like that. and we had we talked about Devo at the time, and I do believe him when he had Paul Harris, Johnny Flynn, Chris Joseph, Scoop Jardine. Those guys would fight in practice all the time. Wes Johnson, but it made him better. Rick Jackson, going on and on. We don't have guys like that right now. I mean, college basketball is different with the NIL the way it is now, but we got to get it. Unfortunately for Autry, his times have come to an end, and we wish him well in what he does. I'm not going to sit there and dump on the guy. But, I mean, this program's headed in a different direction, and we'll see where we go from here. But it's just too many of the same mistakes we see. We cut the lead to 4, we can't inbound the ball. We go that back down 10, we cut it back down to 5, then we miss a free throw, or we throw the ball away, or we travel, or we double dribble. And it's just the frustrating things like that Syracuse fans in my age bracket, as your father, Kyle, have not been used to. When we grew up with it, if we had 8 losses, oh my God, it's a lot of losses.
Yeah.
that was the standard we built. So going to your point of mediocrity, people aren't even happy with being mediocre. No one's happy right now as a fan, and I get the frustration. And I'm a homer. And if I'm telling you it stinks, then you know it's over. And as my friends are always joking me, oh no, if you're saying we're in trouble, then oh gosh, that's not good. Pat would complain to me when we're 34-3 that we didn't play good enough defense. You go, Pat, we're 34-3. What are you complaining about? To get those arguments back again. But that's where we're at. But every team goes through this. I just go back and just remember, St. John's was down. Georgetown's been down. In other sports, Dallas has been to the Super Bowl in 30 years. Italy has been in a World Cup since 2014. These things happen. So hopefully we can figure some things out. We'll still watch the games the rest of the year. But I'm sure Chris Bell will probably put up about 30 points on us on Wednesday night, and he'll let us all know about it, too, on Twitter. And I'm sure Judah Mintz will join in the fun as well, too. Take care, guys.
All right. Appreciate you, Dro. Dro, and a common caller. A lot to kind of usurp from that one. What are your thoughts on Dro's takes there?
Well, the second part of this story that I wanted you guys to know is that not only did Devendorf say that he would fight a couple of times a week, which for the record, I mean, I'm telling you, I've met this guy a couple times. He's not lying about that.
Yeah.
That's 100% what happened. But it came from a place of passion. And the second part of that story is he said that when that would be happening, Jim Boeheim would let it happen. Jim Boeheim would watch it play out for a couple of seconds. This is what he told me on the podcast or whatever, a couple of minutes, and then be like, all right, you guys ready? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He'd let it play out because I think he was the kind of coach that really appreciated that passion. Listen, there are obviously different ways to show passion. I am not, and I don't think, I think even the fans who are calling in, no one's saying that they want to or are promoting fighting. The point is that there was passion behind that. The point is that as far as Devendorf was concerned, whenever he stepped out on the court, he was going to battle with these guys. I mean, this was something that they took really seriously, But beyond that, some of the things he's talking about as far as frustration, listen, I understand that. I mean, Syracuse, without a doubt, got out-rebounded today, 38-28. What actually bothered me was the second chance points. And I told you that when we were watching the game together.
Yeah.
Virginia, 17 second chance points today. To me, it feels like that just can't happen, especially against a top-tier opponent, especially against an opponent that is clearly going to March Madness and beyond, right? That just can't happen. And to me, that stat in particular shows perhaps a little bit of a lack of effort. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think that rebounding is a stat that epitomizes effort.
Yeah.
If you are a great rebounding team, you are a team that is physical. You are a team that cares. You are a team that really takes pride in what you do and takes pride in the name on your jersey. That's just personally how I feel about rebounding.
Yeah, and that calls me back to, I'd say, one instance of a lack of effort that still frustrates me to this day, and it was from 2 weeks ago when they hosted Virginia Tech, and at the end of the game, Donnie Freeman walked under a rebound. He didn't box out and jump for it. He walked under a rebound and a missed free throw for an opportunity to have possession of the ball, down 2 points with 7 seconds to go. Instead, Virginia Tech takes the ball back, and any chance of tying the game or winning it, leaves. And with that, before that, they go to roll the ball in to save clock, and Donnie Freeman did it lazily and too slow and didn't see Ben Hammond at half court ready to dive on the ball. Luckily, it was a jump ball, and Cuse kept it, but that very well could have been a turnover. And that continues to be the issue today. Now, Virginia is a good rebounding team. I don't think there was ever a world where Syracuse was going to out-rebound the Cavaliers. But with that being said, it's not like this team doesn't have the talent and physicality to rebound well. and it's just been an issue the entire season. The other thing that I think a lot of people call out with Autry that's a point of frustration are some of the other controllables. I'd say having a decent free throw shooting team is semi-controllable. Don't get me wrong. There are some factors. Sometimes you just put together a roster that's naturally, unadept to free throw shooting. Today, their free throw shooting was 50%. And that's, I think, the third game in a row where they've shot below 70% at the free throw line. How do the free throws continue to be an issue? Like, that's essentially an off-the-court problem. It's a free throw. And they continue to have really poor free throw shooting. Just another thing that I'm noting, because some of these small things are adding up, because this is another game where they've had a second half collapse. They shot 40% from the field in the second half, went 1 for 6 from 3.
I mean, I'll be honest, my frustration, and I think the fans' frustration at this point, comes from things beyond the free throw. And what I mean by that is, another conversation that I was having today with Mike McAllister that I feel is important is, let's just say that Syracuse played great defense today. Syracuse played the kind of defense that they were playing in the beginning of the season. I think that it's high time that we have a discussion about whether or not Syracuse men's basketball should be incorporating more sets. Called up Mike today. I said, it kind of feels like this team has no plays. He's like, that's not true. They do have plays or a play, but it's essentially kind of based on the guards and screening and a little bit more of what he describes as quote unquote street ball. I think that dates back to the Boeheim days. Yeah. There was never a ton of set plays. The point is that you were supposed to kind of be able to bounce back and forth off of the other players who you're playing with, see what the defense is doing, and adjust based on that. The problem, though, with doing that with a team like this year's Syracuse men's basketball team is that Syracuse is the kind of team that, especially in this day and age, right? You have NIL, you have, players who are changing and going to different schools year after year. The problem is that you need more set plays because I don't think that these players really know each other on the level that they would need to know each other on in order to be able to kind of have that, mentality where they're able to see what each other is doing, if that makes sense. I really feel like in the age of NIL, you kind of need more set plays because these guys haven't been playing with each other for 4 years. They haven't been building and establishing that relationship. The roles aren't as clear, right? You think about a Devendorf team, anybody who was really interested in that era and watched a lot of men's basketball, what you did know is that everybody had a role. And the fans knew what each player's role was, and the other players knew what their teammates' role was. I think that in this year, that's a little bit unclear. And because of that, in my opinion, I actually think that a couple more sets, a couple more, drawn up plays would actually go a long way as far as the offense is concerned.
Speaking of individual players and how they incorporate into this team, I absolutely agree with your point. I think this is not the year to have more street ball sets per se, because there's really only one guy in the team who can just go and get a bucket, and that's Donnie Freeman. But to the point of how individual players perform today, what are your thoughts on Kai and Anthony not playing? No minutes for Kai and Anthony first time all year.
I don't love it.
Yeah.
I would have liked to see him at least get a few minutes because, again, do I think, that I know like there's a clear range of how people feel as far as what kind of time that Kai and Anthony should be getting. I don't think at this point he's a starter, but I do think that he's a guy who tries hard. I think he's a guy who generates offense. I think he's a guy who in some ways is a pure scorer. He's able to drive to the bucket. He cares. He's passionate. He will draw more fouls, right? I'd like to see a guy like that in the rotation a little bit. Yeah, I would, especially when some of the other guys who, generally speaking, get more time aren't necessarily performing up to what we know that they're capable of. Donnie Freeman, 2 for 11 from the field today, 1 for 3 from 3. Again, just a down game for him, but I'm looking through even some of these other guys. I think that at least you could have probably substituted him out, just for a couple of minutes, just to at least shake things up.
Yeah,
That's
Bryce
just how I
Zephyr
feel.
got tons of minutes today. He was on the floor, obviously, before and eventually just on the floor until Kai and Anthony never played. It was very interesting. I know that Anthony hasn't had good games recently, and there are some advanced metrics coming out reflecting Anthony being kind of ineffective, like per possession per se. I don't want to make this more dramatic than it needs to be. Do you think Carmelo's reaction on Twitter to the last game, the SMFH tweet after the North Carolina loss when they were down 32 points at one point, and then Anthony's poor play. Do you think that's kind of combining into a thing where maybe Anthony just isn't on the right side of the minutes that they're looking for?
I understand what you mean. Listen, I think that when Carmelo took that public, he was trying to make a specific point because we all know the influence that he has. And I will say this, last week on the podcast, I asked Steven Dorff, how much of a role do you think that Carmelo Anthony has in what actually happens for the future of this program here? Simply put, he said, more than you would think. So I think that he wanted to take that public in a way to kind of see what the reaction would be. If you look at that Instagram comment, you'll see a ton of other comments under it. You'll see a ton of other traction that it generated, right?
Yeah.
He could have handled it behind closed doors. So I think that the fact that he took it public was a specific choice. I think he perhaps wanted some of the fans to know publicly that he was feeling that way. And it does bring up a question of what this athletics department would do when faced with a situation like that. Because, of course, based on Carmelo Anthony, what you want, the ultimate goal would be to hold on to a player like Kiyan Anthony, would be to hold on to a player like Sadiq White, not to mention potentially some of these other players who you really see value in. Whether or not that's going to happen or not, I think that that is ultimately up to the administration. What happens with the end of this year as far as the Syracuse men's basketball team performance, and then how the administration responds and reacts to what they've seen as far as a record standpoint.
It'll be really interesting because if Kiyan doesn't play the rest of the year, that affects whether or not he comes back,
no doubt.
Obviously. All right, let's go to Tony in North Carolina. Tony, how we doing?
Good. Hey, I just want to some observations here. That we know the offense is really abysmal, but something I noticed, if you watch Virginia, how they played today, they weren't that great, but the one thing they were doing was moving without the ball, and they were getting their shots that way, and we just cannot seem to do that. To Sam's point, I agree with her. No set place. It just baffles me as to this has been going on now, and it just baffles me to no end that there are no set plays. It's all individual iso ball type plays, school ground type plays. So I just wanted to say that, get it off my chest, because I think this team could do better. They have the players, and I think a coach that could actually run plays they would get more wins than they actually have now. And that's just my point, my take. Thank you for taking my call.
Of course, Tony. Appreciate you. All right, let's go straight to Jay in Baldwinsville to continue the conversation.
Hey, guys, real quick. First of all, it's amazing that you guys are getting callers at this point, because where you're going from now is you're going from fans that are upset, fans that are angry, that are just can't understand what's going on, to what's going to start setting in here is apathy. A complete lack of interest in the program. And that's when, like I said, Wild Hack and the rest of them up there are going to basically give the oh crap look. Like, okay, we've lost them. And when apathy sets in, the dollars disappear. And so that's what's going. But to get back a little bit, guys, about, I popped you guys on, and the first thing I heard you guys was talking about Kiyan, and you were wondering if it was bothersome that he didn't play, and you guys were commenting on, well, he should be out there. He can go to the basket, he can score, and then I think one of the reasons is that he actually cares. The one thing that you guys didn't say is that this kid could be possibly, in the guard point, it could be one of the worst defensive players in the ACC.
Yeah.
Okay, the kid cannot keep anybody in front of him. He's physically not ready to play at the level of defense. And quite honestly, and no slap, plant corn, get corn with the father. I mean, Carmelo wasn't known for his defensive prowess either. Okay? So for every bucket he's getting in a game, he's giving up 4 to 6 points just because whether he gets beat or that he can't keep his guy in front of him. So I don't think, to be honest with you, I think he's gone. The other thing is, guys, to be honest with you, and if you go to the game, you see it, he's listening to his father from the sideline as opposed to Red and the other coaches during the game. Okay, he's taking directions from his dad. If you go to the game and watch, they're having conversations throughout the game. Okay, all the other parents are sitting across the court, away from the court a little bit, so that Red has the other players' attention, for that matter. So it's a real problem right now. I hope the kid gets back. What the kid really needs, he needs to put on about 20 pounds of muscle. Okay, I don't think the kid coming in here has seen a weight room. Okay, so those are just some of my thoughts, guys. And to be honest with you, it's quickly going from fan disgust to apathy. And then that's sad because I'm a longtime fan. So
yeah.
I'll hang up, listen to you guys. But this is where we're at. It's a reality at this point.
Well, thank you for calling in, Jay. Seriously, we appreciate it. I mean, the fans keep this show alive, especially in a time like this. The frustration is boiling over, to say the least. Apathy is the word that he used that stood out to me. It makes me think of kind of that 2 to 3 season stretch where St. John's was no longer a powerhouse in the Big East before Rick Pitino took over, where like they were just so god-awful mediocre year after year that a program that people for years were like, man, this is like the pinnacle of the Big East, had kind of died out. They missed the NCAA tournament like 5 years in a row. It kind of reminds me of that in terms of Syracuse's story arc right now. Like, what do we expect from Syracuse going forward? When can they find their way back to the tournament? And do we see a stage 2 to 3 years from now where they're still fighting for 500 basketball and we're still figuring things out with a new coach?
And listen, I think that you will see that, you know, the administration and the decision makers up at Syracuse University don't think that they don't see the situation and know what's going on. I mean, let's just date it back to the facts and deal with what we know. In the beginning of the year, John Wildhack, you know, when asked about the future of the program, said something along the lines of, we're going to need to see this team playing meaningful basketball games in March, right? That was the expectation. So if that expectation is not met, surely it would be reasonable to assume that perhaps a change is coming. Beyond that, I want to go back to what our caller just said, because I thought that he made some particularly interesting points about Kiyan Anthony and what the dynamic is there between Kiyan Anthony, Adrian Autry, and Carmelo Anthony. What do you think about the fact that, you know, Carmelo Anthony, we obviously have seen it comes out on social media, you know, he's helping out with some of the warm-ups as far as like Kiyan and him will be warming up sometimes on the Syracuse court before the game. He's obviously at the games. He's trying to give his insight. He is clearly an incredible basketball player with a wealth of knowledge. What do you think about that from an ethics standpoint?
That is an interesting point, because that'd be the only factor surrounding his relationship with the team that you could argue is maybe inappropriate, is just how closely involved he is with the team. And we all know it's literally just because his son is playing. I mean, he would stop for games and keep tabs on the program during his NBA career. But since he retired, he's been kind of quiet and then, you know, invested in the team's growth with a new head coach. But he didn't obviously start showing up, helping with warm-ups, tweeting about the team, and working as closely with the squad in an unofficial position when his son, he didn't do that until his son started playing, obviously. Now, I'm not going to blame a man for doing that. That's how you support your son, especially a man of his position and power, where he can do that. I mean, he basically is the key to Syracuse. But I agree with you. There might be some ethical questions to discuss, because it turns the conversation of his son and his relationship with the program of Syracuse basketball into something that has multiple factors involved, not just whether or not Kiyan Anthony, if his last name was Smith, for example, if we're talking about a Kiyan Smith and his involvement with Syracuse, whether or not he's a good fit, if he should stick around. There's a lot of kids that if their last name weren't Anthony and they were in the exact same shoes as Kiyan Anthony right now, they'd probably get up and transfer to a different team. So it absolutely shapes the conversation around Kiyan Anthony, because if he isn't Carmelo Anthony's son, I wouldn't blame him for not wanting to play for Syracuse. It's tough. It's tough. So
I agree with you on that. I see we have a caller, so I'll hold my thoughts.
Let's go to Jake in Iowa. Jake, how we doing?
Kyle, thanks for taking my call. Samantha, hey, I watch your show on YouTube. I really enjoy it.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you saying that.
So last season, after Youngstown State and Lemoyne, those games, we kind of knew the team wasn't so good. This year, we have the talent. We have the roster. They should be a tournament team. You talk about, you know, play competitive games in March. You're not even playing important games in February now. What you're doing is trying not to get a losing season, which is really what's on the line right now. You do not. This roster, should not have a losing season. I'll leave you with two thoughts. Number one, if we're all talking about changing coaches, listen, there's a lot of coach talk out there. If you bring in Jerry McNamara, Arinze Awaku, and Ryan Blackwell, at least you have a chance of keeping butts in seats. And I'll leave you with this thought. And I called in last year and said this too. What player on this roster has improved? You'd think Sadiq White would improve playing against Donnie Freeman every year. You'd think Kyan Anthony would improve. What player in your mind has this coaching staff made better? Thanks for taking my call.
Of course. To his question, to be honest with you, I don't know. It's tough to think of players that have actually grown their game under this coaching staff other than Donnie. I mean, but Donnie's was kind of the arc that you expected. We knew he was good before the injuries, and now he just has the minutes to prove it.
Yeah, I really want to commend that caller because that's actually such a great, insightful, measured way, I think, to be thinking about all of this.
Yeah.
Because it is a little complex, right? Outside of just wins and losses, how do you measure success? How long is long enough to give a new head coach time to develop his own program, his own culture, the way he wants to do things, you know? I think that no matter who walked into Adrian Autry's position, there was going to be a lot of pressure there because you're following up on a guy who has such a legacy here in Jim Boeheim, has a mural downtown, right? Has had so much success over a decades-long period that it was going to be tough to fill his shoes, in my opinion, no matter what. But of course, the pressure was going to be higher considering that. Outside of what that caller was saying as far as GMAC, I wanted to point out one thing just about Siena in general. What I will say that I think is interesting, and I have, no idea necessarily yet what I think exactly should happen in the future, but Siena was a team, and I really only realized the gravity of this the other day, that before GMAC took it over, the year before was 4-28.
Yeah, they were bad.
3-17 in the conference. I couldn't believe that. Now, 17-7 overall, 10-3 in the conference. I've long thought that it was sort of interesting that Syracuse always kind of continues to go back into the well as far as former Orange. There are times where that is tremendous, and there are times where that works out. There are also times where it can work out, and it's not somebody who went to the school. And I think year one for Fran Brown, perfect example of that, right? So, there are a lot of different options and things. Were Syracuse University to decide that they wanted to make a change, there are a few different options and routes that they could take. What I will say is that just in a generally speaking way, I think that it's great to see a guy like GMAC be able to have a program where he was able to turn it around like that. Because I think that you could probably, to answer that caller's question on a team like Siena, I'm sure there are, 4, 5, 6 guys who you could say, hey, their game has improved, has significantly gotten better, thanks to GMAC and what he was able to do at Siena.
Yeah, it's interesting because it poses the question between whether or not you want to stay in the family or leave it. Because there are viable options either way. It's just a matter of how much money, and we may never know the exact number, how much money Syracuse can actually fork up in a contract to a new head coach. I don't know if you have inside sources, with your connections to the administration, if you have a ballpark number on that and how competitive it is. I feel like it should be competitive towards the top-ish of the ACC. Polls say that the Syracuse job is 6th best in the ACC. So it's not like it's not a notable position that'll be, kind of a pinpoint of the coaching market this offseason, assuming Autry isn't returning. Let's hold on to that coaching conversation real quick. And in the conversation of improving this team, how about we talk about how to improve this team, brought to you by Auburn Community Hospital. Auburn Community Hospital is improving their team. Apply today at auburnhospital.org. What are your 3 points? I think the first one for me would be boards.
Let's just put rebounds down as number one, straight up. Because like I said earlier, it's an effort stat. That's why it matters to me. So from this particular game, I'll go rebounds. I'll go second chance points and figuring out ways to limit that. I think that It's not to say that Syracuse would have won this game if there were less second chance opportunities, but I think that it certainly would have been a closer score. I think that it would have been a game that's a little bit more competitive. And ultimately, to go back to what some of the callers are saying about when anger turns to apathy, I think that fans would be willing to sit in anger, because let's be honest, as sports fans, we all do that. Yeah. I'm a Mets fan, y'all. I do get that, and I understand the loyalty component that lives there. But like we've all discussed, anger is actually a decent place to live, and I think fans could stay in anger if some of these games against better teams felt a little more competitive.
Yeah.
It at least felt like there was a chance to win these games or to stay close or to compete. I think that fans would feel a little bit differently than they're feeling now, when you kind of just feel like towards the end of the game, the lead for the opposing team just gets larger and larger. As far as the third point, man, I guess for the third point, I'd have to just go back to what I said earlier as far as offensive sets. I kind of think at this point, Syracuse men's basketball is in this place where, what do you have to lose by trying something completely different? You know, if defense was your calling card and it isn't for whatever reason anymore, or at least not 100%, of course it would be great to be able to say that, hey, they need to just get their defense back to what it was in the beginning of the season. Why not just try and implement a couple of set plays just to see what happens? If it doesn't work, it doesn't work, but at least you're trying something different. And I think even shaking a couple of things up, whether that is who's starting or a couple of extra plays in there, just trying something different from an offensive standpoint, I think would go a long way.
You know, I didn't grow up playing basketball, right? So when I just dig into the numbers, I mean, you can see some of the glaring issues, right? Like Syracuse walking away today shooting 27% from three tells you that they're jacking up a lot of ill-advised shots, because that's even worse than their actual team percentage in the low 30s. Now, if we go into the box score, we did have some decent performances today. Nate George was the leading scorer. I feel like there's almost a yin and a yang to Nate George leading the way offensively because he has such a glaring turnover issue. He had two really, really bad turnovers today where he was just chucking a ball across the court for no reason. But at the same time, he is effective when he is on ball often. He was 8 of 9 from the field today, led all scorers with 19 points. Other notable players, Nate Kings with 13 points on 5 of 11 shooting. J.J. Starling, 13 points, 6 of 14 shooting. Donnie Freeman was dead quiet today, 2 of 11 from the field, just 5 points. Your take on that?
I mean, for a while, I thought that this team went as Donnie Freeman went. I really thought that Donnie Freeman was... And in some ways, I still do think that he was is the best player on this team. And obviously, when he was injured, you could, of course, feel his absence, and fans were really excited to have him back. But I'll be honest, and I almost wish that sometimes this could be a live show where we could be hearing from a lot of people at the same time, because frankly, there is something that has confused me about Donnie Freeman and his involvement for legitimately the past few weeks now. I don't know if you feel this way or not. I really want to know what you think on this, though. Something very confounding happens when Donnie Freeman is in the game. He is obviously a tremendous player. And in the games where he is scoring somewhere in the realm of 22 to 28 points, you're like, of course this guy has to be in. Of course we need his offensive production. Yeah. But then why is it that when they took him out of the starting lineup, and I do understand that was against a weaker opponent, but why did that work?
Yeah.
Why was that actually
so
really
odd.
helpful? It's really strange, but something is going on where when Donnie Freeman is in the game, everyone else around him is actually very stifled.
Yeah.
Something about that is strange, because you should be able to have your best player in the game, and your team, as a result, is better.
You know what? I'm gonna draw a weird comparison here, but one that you and I would understand. When we're both younger broadcasters, you're a little more experienced than me, so maybe I'll draw it to this example, not in a realistic sense, because I don't feel super intimidated by you, although you're a great broadcaster. But let's say I'm really young, right? And they say, Kyle, you got to pinch hit and host a show with Sam Croston today. And I come into the show and I'm all nervous. I'm like, man, I'm hosting a show with Sam Croston. That's crazy. And I just don't have the best show because I'm with someone that I know is a lot better than me, and someone that wants to command the mic way more than I want to. And maybe I'm less comfortable commanding the mic and giving my takes because I'm with someone I know is more effective or just a stronger presence on air. I think it's a similar concept with someone like Donnie, who is such a commanding on-ball presence. Like, he demands the ball. So it totally sets off the dynamic offensively for this team. If we think about when Syracuse played their best basketball, before we head to the phone line again, when were their best games? It was, I guess, in recent notice, the Notre Dame game. Donnie Freeman only played 22 minutes and didn't start. Sadiq White was a spark plug in the starting lineup. But their other best games were completely without Donnie when he was injured. That Las Vegas tournament, they played 2 of their best ranked opponent games, only losing by 1 or 2 possessions to Kansas and Houston before they got blown out versus Iowa State. It's very weird, but I see the same thing that you see. All right, how about we go to the Massage Envy hotline? Never mind, that call is still pending. There we go. We got Jake in Iowa hopping back on. There we go, Jake. How we doing?
Kyle, I'm sorry. This is a postseason show. It's not a post-game show, man. The season's over. We really got to start talking about next year. And NIL does not contribute to a coach's salary. The coach is paid by the school, not any NIL budget. At what point in Jim Boeheim's career was he ever in the top 10 of highest paid coaches? He wasn't even close because he wanted to be here. Fran Brown was never an offensive coordinator or defensive coordinator. He was a cornerbacks coach. What do you think they're paying him? It's got to be not even close to the top. It's up to the school to go out there and really pay a coach. Like Doug Marrone was here, brought Syracuse back to having a winning season for the first time, I think, in 10 years. Doug Marrone didn't want more money for himself. He wanted more money for his assistants, and the school wouldn't give it to him. And he left, and what did he do? He brought the Buffalo Bills back to a winning season for the first time in nearly 10 years. So it's not about, it's up to the school to go out there and really pay a coach. NIL, listen, we're not St. John's, all right? St. John's is in New York City. New York City is going to get you all the money you need. If someday St. John's and UCLA will be at 1 and 2 because LA and New York City, NIL, they're going to make all the money. But it's up to the school to pay the next coach. And sorry for bothering you. Have a good show.
Thank you, Jake. Hey, you're not bothering us. Well, yeah, we love callers. Make sure to call in, give us your thoughts, 315-437-7644. Yeah, I guess we don't really actually know how much money Syracuse can get for this next head coaching job.
But I agree with him. I wouldn't be surprised to hear that it is not towards the top.
Yeah.
I think that caller is right to also say that NIL is a different issue, but it is an issue nonetheless. And I actually do think that the two are, at least in some way, related. I think if you're a coach, it's really appealing to go somewhere where you know that you have a lot of donors, where you know that there are millions of dollars locked in and people are on the hook and people are on the line to be spending millions of dollars per year, on schools and on your team, and they want to see you succeed. This is why it's so challenging, I think, to be in the world of college athletics now, because at the end of the day, when you're really talking about big time donors who are donating millions of dollars every single year, I think that it's not about whether or not they have the budget for it. It's about whether or not that's where they want to spend their money. And people who are going to donate in a really big time way want to, I think, see results, but also they're interested in the culture. They're interested in the way that the program is perceived. They want to be around a program that makes them feel proud. And it's like, what do you do? Do you hope that you get more NIL and then that makes the team better? Or do you have to in some way make the team better in order to promote more NIL and more spending from the donors? I think with the Syracuse men's basketball program, likely it would have to be the other way. Because even if you think about football, I feel like they brought in Fran Brown. People were so excited by his attitude. He did a fantastic job at the podium in year one.
Yeah.
He made people, and I'm saying this from a journalist standpoint, he made people buy in a way that I had not seen in my time here, and in a way that my news anchors and people who have been in this market for decades told me they had not seen in decades. That promotes spending.
Yeah. Well, let's hear from the man himself at the podium, Adrian Autry. The postgame presser is now coming up live here on CuseSportsTalk.com, brought to you by RomanoCars.com.
I thought today's game came down to, this afternoon's game came down to points off of turnovers and obviously second chance points. We knew that Virginia's a very good offensive rebound and offensive rebounding team. I thought we really battled with them for the most part. I thought at the end, in the margins where you got to come up with some possessions, they came up with those. We couldn't make any threes. That was they made threes. We had a chance to start the second half, and we didn't convert a couple of transitions and turned it over for a three. And I thought it was an uphill battle from there. But I like the way these guys fought, and like the way our guys fought. It's disappointing for sure because I thought they really, battled defensively today. I just thought our offense just came up short, and that was the difference. Questions?
Adrian, they were so physical and big. I mean, how much did that impact the way Donnie could score and the way Will Kyle could operate maybe inside?
Yeah, I definitely thought that physicality was a difference, especially for those two guys. In particular, Donnie, I thought they really did a good job of pushing him out and keeping the body on him, even when they switched with their guards. Virginia's a very big physical team, an older team, and have a lot of experience. So, I thought that their physicality really bothered our front court guys.
Hey, Coach, it's been 6 losses in the last 7 games. Just wondering, how do you kind of keep your guys afloat through a tough stretch like this?
Those games to play, great opportunities. We ask the same question every time. Obviously these losses are difficult, and everyone's frustrated. Like I said, today is Saturday. Tomorrow, we got to get reset and get ready for our next opponent. That's the schedule. We still have games left on the schedule, so they have to reset. This is a resilient group, a tough group, and I'm sure that we'll respond.
Where does Sam Lewis fall on your guys' scouting report? He's come on as of late for Virginia. What do you see? What did you see from him today?
We thought Sam Lewis and Malik Thomas. Obviously, they have a lot of weapons, and Jakari White. Those 3 guys are the guys that can really, blow the game open, with their shooting. So, we wanted to really try to, the Ritter he's pretty good, so he's going to get his. We just tried to see if we can eliminate, or minimize those 3. But Sam Lewis is a veteran guard. I mean, he made big shots for these guys today. The one at the end of the shot clock, I thought we had a really good defensive possession. He just stepped up and drained it. But experience, tough. I think Virginia's, they're more physical live than they are on film. I was really, impressed with their physicality especially from the perimeter, but their overall strength.
Coach, took you 7 minutes and 45 seconds to get in the bonus in the first half. Looking at 8 being able to cut the run or make a run to cut the lead down to 0 towards the end of the first half, mostly off 2-pointers. To what degree did sort of being in the bonus give you a lot of leeway and help you guys cut that lead to 0?
Yeah, I think we wanted to come in and be aggressive. We knew that they would, they fast. They want to speed you up. I thought we did a really good job in the first half of finishing in the lane, finishing strong, attacking and getting into the bonus. And I think that allowed us to keep going forward. The second half, I didn't think we took the strong enough shots that we needed to take to finish in the paint, and that was the difference.
Red, how much pressure does it put on you when the other team is taking so many more threes than you? And, of course, they're going to make a few more, but just the amount of threes that they took.
Yeah, they shot 30. We couldn't make any, and we only got 11 up. And, again, the way some of it is stylistic, some of it is, again, they got more opportunities because of the offensive rebounds. I thought that was really the key that really separated them. And, obviously, early on we pressed a little bit. So they got a couple up there. But, a lot of their threes, because they're such a good offensive rebounding team, and they really work on kicking it out, getting to guys, and they push the ball. And their defense, their defense will speed you up and make you take some quick shots as well. But I thought they just did a good job of, offensive rebounding and kicking it back out, especially late. I thought some of our threes, and then we turned it over. It was a couple of when we turned it over that we couldn't get back and defend the three-point line.
No Kyan today. Reason back here. Was there a reason for holding him out of the lineup or any injury concern with him at all?
No injuries, concerns. It was just, my decision. Again, it was something that this is a physical team, experienced team, and I just, that was just my decision. Nothing else, no injuries, anything like that. It's no narratives about any of this stuff, man. I just made the decision. That was just my decision that I made today.
Time for one more.
Bryce Seffer got some more run today. Just what went into that decision, and was that just trying to, kind of keep up with Virginia's, high defensive style of play?
Yeah, I thought Bryce had, for the last 2 weeks, he's been really good. I think he's practiced really good. He gives us a sense of physicality and toughness on the perimeter, and also a guy that that is looking to get people involved. And I think that's something that was, missing a little bit for us. I think, we have guys that can score, that like to score, but I think, especially this game right here, I thought, his physicality defensively, I wanted to, I knew we were going to play a lot of man. So, that was my thinking. But he's been a worker all year, guys that come in and work every day and give you everything and never complain, that resonates. And obviously, we're trying to find that right ingredients. And I thought today our defense was really good. I didn't think, we lost the game because of our defense. I thought we lost the game because of, some turnovers, and then, a couple of missed rebounds. I thought that was a difference. But I thought overall, we defended really well. We had some breakdowns, of course, but I thought the defense was not the issue. But the play Bryce, he's tough, he's physical, he's an older guy, and again, I thought this team needed someone else to try to get people the ball.
Thanks, Coach.
Thanks.
All right, back on here on QSportsTalk.com, the Burdick Toyota post-game show, and different game, kind of same story. And that post-game presser brought to you by RomanoCars.com, particularly somber. I think Coach Autry seems more defeated than usual after a loss like this. It makes me want to go grab like a half gallon of ice cream and just eat it after watching that game. That was a tough one.
No, listen, I know what you mean. It's got to be tough for everybody involved, right? He said that he thinks that this is a resilient group, a tough group, and I'm sure that they will respond. But I totally understand where that gets harder and harder to do as the losses pile up. I also thought it was interesting what he pointed to as far as why they lost this game. It was interesting to hear him say that he thought the defense played pretty well today, and that he would probably say that they lost the game because of turnovers and rebounds. So thought that was worth pointing out too. I appreciate the fact that he took ownership over the Kyan Anthony decision, kind of shut down the fact that there's no narratives. There was also no injuries. I also think that you can read between the lines that when he says this was a physical, experienced team, he's saying, back to one of our previous callers' points, that perhaps he was looking for bodies that were a little bigger, bodies that were a little stronger, players that were a little bit more experienced. So at least we got, some of the insight and reasoning as to why that decision came today.
So when you look at the schedule ahead, how do you see Syracuse handling their next 7 games? 4 of their next 7 games are quad 1 opportunities. They host Cal, then they host SMU. That's a borderline quad 1 opportunity. At number 5, Duke, they host UNC, at Wake Forest, at Louisville, and then they finish the season at home versus Pitt, which might be the only game for the rest of their schedule that I'm confident they can actually win. What's a win for Syracuse at this point? Finishing the season 500 or above?
Feels hard to say that would be a win. In my mind, that just doesn't 100% feel right. I am not sure whether or not we would be able to constitute the season as a win just because they got to 500. Overall, right now, the team is 13-10. They're 4-6 in the conference. I mean, sure, at this point, if you want me to think about it from an actual standpoint of what could be a win at this point, I think what should have been the win was you're aiming for the NCAA tournament. If that doesn't happen, I suppose I'll go with a 500 record in conference and let's see them get into the ACC tournament and make sure that they don't get booted out of that.
Yeah, they're 11th in the standings right now. Again, Syracuse dropping a dud at JPJ Arena in Charlottesville, Virginia. Final score 72-59. You're hanging out with Kyle Marchak and Sam Croston on the CuseSportsTalk.com post-game show, brought to you by Burdick Toyota. So Cuse now losers of 6 of their last 7. The main storylines, Kai and Anthony didn't play. Now the Orange fell to 13-11 overall, 4-7 in ACC play. If they were to climb back to 500 in ACC play this year, that would mean winning 4 of their last 7. So what games realistically at this point do you think they can even win? They host Cal. That's winnable-ish. Then they host SMU, which I don't feel confident in. The rest of their matchups until they host Pitt to finish the season are ranked matchups. I don't know if any of them are winnable, although they do pay a visit to Wake Forest. Pardon me. That's their third to last game of the year. Also possibly winnable.
Yeah, I mean, man, especially, at Duke, that obviously doesn't help. At least the game against UNC on February 21st is in the Dome. Potentially you think that plays somewhat of a role, but I know what you mean. If we're saying that would be successful for them to win 4 out of 7, is that what I would predict? No. I would say out of the last 7 games, if I had to predict right now how many they were going to win, I'd probably go with 2.
Yeah.
I'd go 2 for 7.
That's where my head is at, too. I think they should be able to beat Pitt at home. Cal will be competitive. Something tells me they might have a better time winning at Wake Forest than at home versus Cal, just because Cal's offense is so strong this year. I don't know. There's a lot of negative coverage surrounding this team. It's bizarre being this early into a season talking about who the next head coach is. So let's make that our final topic in the waning minutes of this show. Are you on the ship of going outside of the family or staying in the family for whoever this next head coach may be?
I am in the camp of if Syracuse decides to go a different route, because again, I want to make sure that, I'm not assuming anything, but let's just say that that's how, the university ends up deciding to go. That's the direction they want to go in. I'm really more so in the camp of picking the best candidate. And I think that I can't necessarily, make that decision. The decision makers can't make that decision until you actually see who's interested in this job, who wants this job, and what their qualifications are. Listen, I have no problem, with Syracuse liking that idea of staying within the family. And of course, you'd have to think that someone who has Syracuse connections and has Syracuse ties would be someone who would feel really compelled to propel this program back to greatness. At the same time, there's more, in my opinion, than a Syracuse connection that matters when you're thinking about a head coaching position and the importance of it. You have to think about what kinds of connections this person has. Back to the NIL bullet. All right. What kind of connections do they have? How personable are they? Even those kinds of things. How do they do at the podium? How do they do in press conferences? Those are the kinds of things that end up getting filtered around through social media. Those are the kinds of things that get traction. I actually think you'd be surprised how big of a role that plays in NIL. Yeah. How is this actual person perceived? But beyond that, what does their track record look like? For instance, have they been able to turn a program around? Do they have a track record of winning and success? I think all of those things are the kinds of things that you have to consider. Not to mention, is this a kind of coach, perhaps most importantly, that can really rally a team and unify a team when you know that very likely it's going to be, again, another year of a roster that is being reconstructed, a roster that has a lot of new faces on it, a roster where people are going to be meeting for the first time, but they have to play like they've known each other for 3 or 4 years. Can you build a great culture within the team so that even when times are hard, even when the team is down by 10 or 12 points, Syracuse fans can go back to feeling like in any game, we have a chance?
It's tough to say when that would be. I liked the simplicity of your approach, though. It's not about in or outside of the family, just who's the best coaching option. And we don't know who will want this job. I think a lot of people are calling for Joshua Schertz of St. Louis. He's done a wonderful job of that program. But who's to say he would want to go to Syracuse? He's probably going to get poached by other Power 4 schools, too. So then it turns you to, okay, there might be a couple other guys left. Is the head coach at Miami of Ohio going to be interested in any new jobs? Or is the best option after that Mike Hopkins or Jerry McNamara? So a lot of coaching conversations to talk about here. Again, the season's not over yet. So let's talk about some more Cuse basketball on the Massage Envy hotline. We go to Vito and Clay.
Yeah, what's up, guys? Yeah, so I like to look at the stat sheet right after the game. The one thing that sticks out to me, Freeman, Kings, and Betsy were combined. Not Betsy, actually. Betsy was 1 for 1. 3 starters combined 1 for 10 from 3, and it's not going to cut it against a team like Virginia.
Yeah.
And you see George go 8 for 9 from the floor, and that's great. But the catch with that is he got 3 assists. In the Notre Dame game, they crushed him. He played very efficient, no turnovers, 10 assists. And that's what we need from point guard play, or any team in basketball needs from their point guard. And it's like if you get one good thing out of them, but you lose on the other thing. And that's what bit them today, I should say. It's just frustrating, man. I mean, like, you get to 35-35, and I'm at a point now where if I'm coach, I'm calling time out there and saying, okay, guys, it's 0-0. Let's keep our composure. Let's stay in the game. But he doesn't call that time out there, and we see it's like a broken record. The teams score, they get a 3 and a 2, suddenly it's 5, and then they'll hit another 3, and it's back out to 8, and it's game over because we're hoping that, odds have it that we can mount another comeback, and it's not in the cards. So it's like we need multiple comebacks against these top 4 teams. And I was talking to my family, and you have the bottom feeder teams like Georgia Tech, Boston College. They snipe one win off the top teams.
Yeah.
It seems like, you know what I mean? Like BC will beat Duke.
Mm-hmm.
You'll see Georgia Tech maybe sneak a win over North Carolina. We never have a chance against these top 3 or 4 teams.
Yeah.
Since in these last 5 years, it's like we don't have a shot, and it's strange to me how we can't even by the odds just beat one of those teams once, and it drives me nuts. But last thing I want to say, dude, NIL. I don't know. You see Rutgers $70 million in debt. And there's a lot of people think that the NCAA is allowing it to go roughshod because they're getting sued constantly, and they don't care anymore. They're just going to let you got teams recruiting from the G League now, and the NCAA is just giving up because they keep getting sued, and they want Congress to step in, and it's just out of control now. And I think schools like Syracuse are getting hurt by NIL because these other teams at the top are willing and able to pay more money. And I hear a lot of bad things about the finances up at Syracuse with how much they're having to pay players. And this whole era just is a disaster right now.
Yeah.
That's all I got.
All right. Appreciate you, Vito. Yeah, I mean, he does bring a good point to the table, and maybe something that'll be talked about this offseason, the money. Got to talk about the money. You know about it a little bit better than me, but it'll be very peculiar if we get any information on what type of money is available NIL-wise, and then also for a head coaching position competitively. You have any ballpark as to where that might be?
No, but I think that to that caller's point, I do agree that there have to be some guardrails at least here. I think that for a while when NIL came to the forefront, it was like college athletics was it was like the wild, wild west of college athletics.
Yeah.
The best way that I can describe it, right? No rules. Everybody is doing anything. And listen, I always was in the camp, this is just me personally, that athletes should be able to profit off of their fame. Mm-hmm. I mean, as opposed to the school being able to make all of the money, I think that the athletes are the ones putting in the work. And I think people don't understand, even when it's a losing team, like this is a full-time job for these guys. Like they're still going to school, right? And they are playing. I do think that they should be able to make money, any athlete, off of their sport. That being said, I think that now it's very clear that college athletics has become and is a business. So if it is a business, then in some way you'd have to think that the athletes should be treated like employees. There should be contracts here. And I think that there are a few different ways that you could go about managing that, right? Perhaps it's something to the effect of, we are paying you a lot of money, but you have to stay here for a 3-year period, or there are buyouts, or there are opt-outs, something that feels a little bit more like any of the professional leagues that we have to use as a reference here. It can't just be, we're going to pay you any amount of money that you want for 1 year. Because yes, then of course, in some way, it is going to get in the way of how competitive a team like Syracuse can be. Not to mention, I do understand listen, there have been fans who have commented on my podcast and said, I don't want to go out there and buy a jersey when I know that I'm only going to be able to wear it for 1 year. Like, I understand that, There used to be something that was really cool and interesting and inspiring about watching a player's development. If you're a true fan, that's cool to be able to watch a player go from being a freshman, right, to being a sophomore, junior. You get to see the development of the player. You get to see the way that they all interact. I understand that there are people who feel brokenhearted that era of college athletics is over. But it is. So it's time to figure out how Syracuse can be competitive in the world that we're living in right now.
It's the lesser of two evils. Players can profit off their own, likeness, which if I were an athlete in college, I'd be frustrated not being able to cut a deal with a local sandwich shop. They call the sandwich the Marchak or something because I'm the third best scorer on the team, just so I can make a couple extra bucks or something,
Think about how the past players feel. That's what I mostly think about. I think about guys who were great when NIL wasn't around and how frustrating that must be to see now that these guys are making a bag when you never had the opportunity to do that. You know what I mean? This probably should have happened a long time ago, but as is the case with, frankly, some of the things that the NCAA rolls out, it wasn't clean. It was not a clean rollout, and there was way more to figure out, and this thing meaning NIL, just completely went off the rails for the first, year plus.
When you were a D1 lacrosse goalie, how many years did you miss the NIL era by?
Not much. I graduated in 2020. It wouldn't have mattered a ton because, again, there are obviously, larger conversations for another day about where the NIL money goes. I think many of us understand that from school to school, predominantly the bulk of that money is going to football and basketball teams. But, they do have ways at every school that they're trying to fight for some sort of equity there as far as making sure that everybody's getting a share of the profit. All that to say, I wasn't going to be rich either way, but I completely understand that for the players who are, this is life-changing money. So I think players should have that opportunity. But again, like I said, there has to be guardrails. If you really want better competition, and better competition, as always, is better for the sport.
Yeah. Well, yeah, like I said, lesser of two evils, right? I mean, these players are bouncing between schools, but now they can make their own money. You're right, though. It's got to be like actual contractually binding offers now, year by year. So with that being said, how about we take a peek at the ACC scoreboard before wrapping things up? SMU at halftime at Pittsburgh, only up by 2 points, and kind of a similar story in Boston. Miami only up 2 points at Boston College. So two top flight ACC schools, to Vito's point, are in upset watch right now at halftime. 4 p.m. tip, Notre Dame hosting Florida State. Not too much of consequence in that contest. And then, of course, the game everyone's going to watch tonight. Duke, number 4 team in the country, at 14 North Carolina. You going to be watching that at 6:30?
To be honest with you, probably not.
Yeah, I'm not in a basketball mood anymore either.
I got to be honest, I think I'm probably basketballed out for today.
Yeah. No, I'm definitely soaked up for sure. So, all right, I think with that being said, what are you looking forward to for that Cal matchup coming up? Net 55 team in the country, quad 2 opportunity for the Cuse.
Again, I think that there is a lot here. I mean, think about the way that we just felt having this post-game conversation. I understand the fact that people are feeling upset, and I might even say the better word at this point is deflated, defeated, gutted. I understand all of those emotions. I think that for this Syracuse men's basketball team, and this is just how I feel as a former athlete, no matter how the season ends, whether that likely means missing March Madness, the ACC tournament is still something that is up for grabs right now. And there are some players on this team who will not play in a Syracuse uniform again. I think that from a pride standpoint, from an athlete mindset standpoint, it is still just important how you finish out the year. It is important to prove something.
Yeah, it'll be bizarre, like how they can kind of save face for the rest of the season. With that, how about we try and end it on a positive note and go to Dave in Connecticut. Dave, how we doing?
Doing fine, folks. Thanks for taking my call. This downslide started against Boston College. You remember that game, I'm sure, the both of you. Syracuse was up pretty well in that game, like 7 or 9 points, and there was a technical foul called against Sadiq White. Okay. I can forgive him for that. He's a freshman, okay? He goes off the deep end sometimes, but I'm thinking that's because of his age. 18-year-old freshman can be forgiven. What I saw today, Donnie Freeman had a dunk and went in the face of a Virginia player and got called for a technical foul. And there's no need for that. He's the leader of this team. He is the leader of the team, and he is supposed to reflect on the others, and it's not showing. Okay? They play better without, and this is going to sound strange. They play better when he doesn't have the ball in his hands. And the reason why I'm saying that is the other players look for each other when he doesn't have the ball. When he has the ball in his hands, it's him against the other five.
Yeah.
And we don't need that. You know, Red's gone. We know this. I'm a big fan of Jerry. Look at what Sienna's done in the MAC this year. This is a Syracuse guy through and through. Give him the chance. He's a younger guy. He knows the NIL ins and outs. Put him in there.
Gotcha.
Put him in. I think there are a lot of Syracuse fans out there that will agree with me. They don't need the St. Louis coach. He's a good coach. Believe me, they don't need him. They need somebody like Jerry who's bled orange through and through. Thanks for taking my call, guys, and good luck for the rest of the season. I don't know how they're going to win. Maybe they'll win the Pittsburgh game in Boston College, but I don't see them winning any others.
Yeah, I think they'll take the Pitt game at least. All right, Dave, appreciate you for calling in, and stay warm out there. So that was Dave in Connecticut, our final caller on the Massage Envy hotlines. Kind of epitomizes everyone's thoughts on the team right now.
Let us say we ended on a positive note.
Yeah. I was like, let's end on a positive note. And he's like, this team stinks.
Dave in Connecticut. That was great. No, listen, Dave, I wonder when Dave called in, to be honest, or started watching the show, because he's talking about how it sounds strange, but there's something that's going on with Donnie Freeman. He's talking about the GMAC turnaround. Dave, you want to go grab a beer sometime, man? I mean, like, that's everything I just said. No, I agree with both of those things. As far as, GMAC just being a good coach and having an interesting turnaround there, I totally agree that something strange is going on with Donnie Freeman. And you should, like I said, it just doesn't make any sense. You should be able to be a better Syracuse men's basketball team when your best player is on the court, of course. I also agree and understand what he means. I don't think that this is why they necessarily won or lost. But listen, when it comes to technical fouls, I feel like there are a million examples of that, even as far as you want to look at football, right, and some of the 5-yard penalties and all that. When you're a leader, leading means that you got to let things go sometimes. Yeah. Leading means that you're able to control your temper in a really high-pressure moment. And frankly, back to your analogy about us being broadcasters, if you are really a leader, then if you are the best player in the room, then you should be able to make the other people around you better.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I think that's true in life.
And that's the thing. You shouldn't have to step on someone else in order for you to elevate yourself. Not that Donnie's intentionally doing that, but his playing style as an ISO, kind of a one-on-one player, takes away from the team basketball that Adrian Autry's been trying to get out of this ball club. Man, you and Dave really do have to go grab a beer. You're from Long Island. You said beer. You should have said, say coffee real quick.
Coffee.
Yeah, that sounds Long Island. And Dave, I can tell you just talking to Dave, that guy's from New York. You guys can grab a couple of drinks together for sure. All right, Sam, well, it's been awesome hosting this first show with you. So hopefully we'll be able to talk about a win going forward. But for now, for the next 7 games, quad 1 opportunities, they can either sink or swim in this next stretch to close the season.
The only thing I'll say to end is something that I say frequently. Hope is not a strategy. So they're going to need some strategies to do a better job here.
Dang, hope is not a strategy. You've never hit the casino with me before.
That's a good point. And
No,
I bet
I'm
if
kidding.
I did, I'd see that play out.
All right, Sam, it's been a pleasure hosting a show with you. This is wrapping up the final minutes of our Cuse Sports Talk postgame show. Make sure to stick around and come back next week as they host Cal. Syracuse looking to get back in the win column. They're losers of 2 in a row. I'll have the pre- and post-game coverage for that contest. 7 p.m. tip-off, so I'm on air at 6 p.m. Until then, I'm Kyle Marchak with Sam Croston, and we'll see you next time on CuseSportsTalk.com.